What up guys, welcome to my new Havoc Demon Hunter PvP guide. In this video I will be guiding you through the best starter build for the Season 2 patch 10.1. After a few weeks we will have access to our class tier set bonus, for which I will be making a new updated guide. Without further ado, hope you enjoy. First, let's take a look at our stat priority. Havoc still follows the same pattern. Mastery is by far our best secondary stat, followed by versatility, then critical strike chance, and finally haste. Mastery boosts all your chaos damage by a massive amount, and thanks to our any means necessary talent, all your physical damage will be amplified by this. Versatility boosts both our damage and defense by a significant amount, which usually makes it the most popular secondary PvP stat for every class in the game. Crit chance is also pretty good. It synergized well with our previous set bonus, but even now it still is much better than haste in my opinion. Haste will make your gameplay more fluid and reduce your global cooldowns, which will allow you to react and chain skill combos much faster, but for me, personally, I prefer to leave it as a last option. It all comes down to your playstyle. If you enjoy having a little bit of extra haste, don't let anybody tell you not to, just go for it and have a blast playing with it. When it comes to gems, your best option is the Zen Neltharite, granting you a lot of mastery and a little bit of versatility as well. Now let's take a look at the enchants. You want to buy your 3 necklace sockets. There are 3 levels of the same enchant, of which you will need to buy a total of 3 of. Now notice that each socket requires an enchant of its bracket or higher. So if you go to the action house and the bronze level enchant is more expensive than the silver one, just buy 2 silver quality ones, as the first one you use will unlock your bronze bracket socket. As for the third slot, you will always have to buy the golden option. Then for the cloak, we want Regenerative Leash, as the leash stat synergizes well with the Demon Hunter playstyle. Even though a few months ago Blizzard has made some, let's call it unfortunate changes in that regard. For the chest, we want Waking stats. On the bracers, 200 leash. On the pants, we want Fierce Armor Kit. For the boots, go with Watcher's Loam. On the rings, your best option is the highest mastery enchant. And finally, for the weapons, you want the agility proc on both. If you are an old school player, you might find it odd to use the same enchant on both hands, but in Dragonflight, weapon stat enchants stack with each other, which means that you will indeed be proccing them at a singular rate. However, the buff you get will be twice as strong. The main stat option is always the way to go, however, it also is the most expensive one. So if you're planning to enchant temporary honor weapons and the price difference is way too high, then just go with the mastery option instead. They will do just fine until you get your permanent conquest weapons. Now let's take a look at the trinkets. This topic is highly dependent on your playstyle, so take this as my personal opinion and not as the absolute way to go for everyone. For crowd control removal, you have 2 options. If you are playing with a pre-made arena team and are able to communicate with your healer, then Medallion is the way to go, as you will be carefully choosing when it is worth using. However, if you are playing solo shuffle or without comms, then I highly advise you to use the Sigil. This trinket has half the cooldown of the medallion and goes off immediately on any crowd control with a duration of 5 seconds or more. This means that it will not spend the trinket to remove, let's say, a 4-second root or a 3-second polymorph. It will also auto-remove your crowd control, so your healer won't be spending his dispel on you at the same time. Something that will happen a lot if you run Medallion on solo shuffle. I absolutely love this trinket, it is amazing. I cannot understand how pretty much no one else uses it. However, if you are going against a rogue, it might be a good idea to swap into your medallion, because if the rogue is aware, he will simply take your trinket with a sap at the start of the match. As for the second trinket choice, the emblem is the way to go. Flat agility is always reliable, and an extra 2-minute defensive is a major advantage in today's heavy burst meta. The other 2 damage options can be taken, but I personally don't recommend it, as a 1-minute cooldown does not align with your burst window. And please do not wait 20 seconds on your entire burst every time, just for the sake of the trinket. trinket, that will result in way less damage output than you would otherwise be doing with the defensive emblem option. The proc trinket is a better pick however, but it is quite unreliable and haste just doesn't drive my boat. Now finally, let's take a look at our build. As you can see, for now, not much has changed, but I do now recommend you to use sigils. I know I hate them too, but Sigil of Misery has won me so many matches that I simply had to stop being stubborn about it and just started using it. It takes a little bit getting used to due to the built-in activation delay, but don't worry, you'll get the hang of it in no time. Demon Hunter has very good instant cast crowd control, and the ability to extend it with the sigil is just too powerful to pass on. So make sure that you take the 30-second reduced cooldown with it. Also, take precise sigil so that it will always be used on your target's location. Don't worry, your focus cast Sigil of Misery macros will still work as intended. Sigil of Flame is just a nice button to get for 1 talent point. This is basically what you press when you need Fury and can't get it in any other way. Also, make sure to use this preactively before engaging each fight and while kiting so that you charge into the fray with some additional Fury to get your damage going. I advise you to use this macro. This will make your Sigil of Flame always cast on your current location, negating the effect of precise sigils. The reason for that is because this gives you more control over the area where you use it at. You cannot choose your enemy's location, but you can choose your own. And the last thing you want is to break your teammates' crowd control by mistake by using this sigil. Also, leaving this ability on the ground behind you is a pretty effective way to catch stealthy classes off guard. Always pick Collective Anguish. I cannot believe that I still see some Demon Hunters not taking this. It has good damage, a lot of healing, especially if you hit a bunch of pets with it. And the best part is, it does not stop when you cancel your I-Beam. About that, with this build, I-Beam is just a catalyst. You do not want to keep channeling it. I have made multiple videos about that, but if you haven't seen one of them yet, don't worry, I will explain it here as well. You should be using one of these two macros in order to cancel your I-Beam. The reason for that is because all it takes to disrupt your burst window is an interrupt on your I-Beam, which will be almost guaranteed as you approach higher ranks. However, if you cancel it with this macro, you will still have the full benefits of the demonic talent, plus an additional 2 seconds of free demon form. If you are curious about this, I go more into detail in the dedicated video I will leave in the description below. Still, even using this trick, some guys will manage to get an interrupt through every once in a while. If that happens, remember that only your Chaos Magic School abilities will get locked, so you should immediately use your Death Sweep, so that you might be able to fit another one right as your demon form is expiring after you Essence Break once the interrupt effects wear off. Keep in mind that your mobility will still be available as well. Now back to the talent tree, I highly recommend you to use Long Night. This will extend your darkness effect by 3 seconds. Darkness is a very powerful team-wide defensive. Even if you have to get out of it in order to get back in the fight, remember that your healer and your DPS teammates will still be able to make use of it. And having your healer or range DPS protected for an additional 3 seconds can and often will save you the game. In solo shuffle, you should use a macro like this in order to let your team know when and where you popped darkness. It will be a bit spammy for them, I know, but it will also win you a lot of games. Now to the Havoc specific tree. This build has very high resource generation when played properly, which is a very good synergy with this season's first set bonus, but that is just a good to know, as the set build itself will likely be a bit different. The reason for Fury generation to be so high is because of these 3 talents: Burning Hatred, Tactical Retreat, and the Sigil of Flame we talked about. Tactical Retreat discipline is what distinguishes good demon hunters from great ones. I am still working on it myself, and to be honest, I have a lot to improve in this topic. But hey, as people used to say, do as I say and not as I do. Joking aside, Tactical Retreat is a very versatile ability that benefits from multiple talents, especially from the well-known PvP talent Glimpse. which single-handedly is the reason why Tactical Retreat elevates Demon Hunter's skill cap by so much. Make sure to keep your momentum up. As you get used to the build, it will become second nature, you will automatically be playing around it without even noticing it really fast. Essence Break has been nerfed countless times, but still, it is what makes our burst window possible. So of course, take it and use it right after I-Beam with the macro I talked about earlier. Mortal Dance is a PvP must-have, incredibly powerful talent, don't even think about not picking this, Demon Hunter is not viable without it. This is one of the reasons Demon Hunter is still strong despite being the most nerfed class so far this expansion. The ability to apply an AoE healing reduction effect to the entire enemy team every time you press a 8-second cooldown button is just amazing. Fodder to the Flame is a must-have, you need that self-healing, and that 20% damage buff is absolutely necessary. I made the guide on this talent alone, I highly recommend you watch it after this video. I have had a lot of toxic comments of players who simply do not understand how the demon soul consumption works. A lot of people seem to think that you get the 20% damage buff from executing the demon, and that is simply and undeniably wrong. You get the buff from consuming the demon soul after you execute it. And no, you do not automatically get it. The consumption takes place by proximity, so you need to walk close to it for your character to gain the buff and a little bit of healing as well. Make sure you are well aware of this, otherwise, in case the soul spawns a bit far, you will be leaving the 20% damage buff on the ground somewhere. Soon it will despawn, and with it goes that match kill potential. Blizzard have recently made some changes in order for the soul to spawn closer to you, so this should be much easier to do now than it was in the past season. Moving on, Soul Rend is the bread and butter of this build. Your Trogglaive ability will take priority over Chaos Strike, but this rule has two exceptions. During your demonic, Chaos Strike takes priority, and if your target is really low on HP, within a Chaos Strike critical hit range from going down, then you should use it instead of Glaive Throw, as its damage is instantaneous, and it might very well finish off your target right there and then. In any other situation, Trogglaive is the way to go, and make sure you always have one charge recharging, as anytime you have two charges just sitting there, your damage potential is being heavily reduced. Burning Wound is amazing, it allows your Immolation Aura to do a lot of AoE damage, and more importantly, gives us another strong and easy to apply dot effect that lasts for 15 seconds. Amazing talent, so much value here, for instance keeping stealthy classes out of stealth. Remember that every time you use Immolation Aura, your next Fell Rush will hit everyone it goes through very hard. Be mindful of this in order to apply some big surprise AoE damage. Always take Demon Blades, there is no universe where insatiable hunger is an option. Why would anyone want to spam a very unrewarding ability and be stuck within global cooldowns from doing so? That option just breaks the entire class, completely disregard it, I don't even know why Blizzard still has it there. Another way you can spend these 2 extra talent points is to get Netherwalk. It was worth taking when it was 1 point away from our path, but at 2 points it no longer is a good option. Netherwalk is not as useful to us as it seems. You are essentially useless to your team while immune, and pay attention to the fact that it only immunes damage. You cannot use it to break out of crowd control, for example, the way a Paladin Bubble or a Mage Ice Block can. Still, I like to use it to prevent incoming damage and reposition, but now that they changed its place in the tree, it is no longer worth taking, but still remains an honorable mention. Also, Relentless Onslaught was the best choice for the past season, since it synergized incredibly well with our set, but now you can freely replace it if you want to. The popular choice is Chaotic Transformation. I personally don't like it much, but it seems to be what most top players go for. Isolated Prey can have its uses, more so in 2v2, because in 3v3 you will more often than not want to hit as many targets as possible with all of these abilities. Still, it remains an okay choice. Ragefire could give you a little bit of extra damage, but it is so unreliable that I don't advise you to play with it at all. At the end of the day, I still favor Relentless Onslaught. This talent gives you the element of surprise, a 10% chance to strike twice with Chaos Strike, can stress out the enemy healer in the right situation, or even win you the game, especially when it occurs during your empowered demon form. Now let's take a look at the PvP talents. Always take Chaotic Imprint with this build, your Trogglaive will always benefit from whichever magic damage comes out of this, thanks to our Any Means Necessary talent. And depending on your team, you might also be increasing the damage of your teammate. Let's say for example that it comes out as the Fire School of Magic. Your Fire Mage teammate will be a very happy man for about 20 seconds. Next up we have Glimpse. I already talked about this one, but just keep in mind that the more experience you have with Havoc Demon Hunter, the more impactful this talent will become. This used to have a 75% damage reduction effect. It is okay that it got nerfed, because damage reduction isn't even the reason we use it in the first place. I have made a tips and tricks video featuring some very useful interactions with this, make sure to take a look at it, and I will be making another more complete one in the near future with even more tips and tricks. A very good use for this is to break out of disarm effects. Yep, you heard right. Vengeful Retreating while you have the Glimpse PvP talent will immediately remove disarm on yourself. This kind of knowledge is precious and extremely necessary in order to succeed with this class. As for the last option, most times you should be running Reverse Magic. You can remove all harmful magic effects from yourself and your nearby teammates every minute. This is pretty much an AoE medallion, however keep in mind that you cannot use it while under a disabling effect, and that some crowd control is not considered magical. Otherwise, free your healer of crowd control, break yourself and your team out of that Frost Nova, or even reflect a Priest Mind Games ability. Mind gaming a mind game, oh man, Demon Hunter is just so fun. There are two honorable mentions, which are Detainment and Unending Hatred. Detainment is very useful if you see that a solo shuffle teammate is breaking your imprison. If you notice that, just pop this PvP talent up on the next match you have to play with him. Also, this effectively makes your imprison an instant cast Cyclone, so you can use this to prevent healing on an enemy, then use that time to set up proper crowd control on the enemy healer, and as soon as the imprison ends, finish off the guy and win the match right there and then. Unending Hatred might sound like a weird choice, nobody uses it, but since Demon Hunter has become a viable kill target in the arena, I do believe that this is pretty good, especially if you take in account this season's tier set bonus that truly shines with high Fury generation. When it comes to our other macros, that I have not yet mentioned in this video, a must-have is the instant Metamorphosis on cursor location. This macro will allow you to react very fast and make use of your Metamorphosis immunity window to turn the battle in your favor. Yes, you are completely immune during the animation, and you can use that to completely avoid big damage enemy abilities such as the Hunt, avoid incoming crowd control, or even get out of lockdown abilities. When it comes to how you crowd control cross targets, it is entirely up to you. There are 3 effective methods of doing so, and all of them can be seen at the highest level, depending on what is more comfortable for the player. With that said, the most efficient way is to use Arena 1, 2, 3 macros for every single crowd control ability plus your interrupt. I have used this strategy for a long time, but since Solo Shuffle came out, seeing the healer position swapping every match, it is just too confusing. Blizzard should, for example, always make the healer Arena 1 on both teams. That would make the game so much more fluid and enjoyable. It would completely remove the clunkiness between matches, as people would no longer need to change their macro positions, or be worried that after 5 rounds of having the healer on Arena 1, you will now mess up by mistake, as he turns out to be on Arena 3 this time around. This simple change would also help healers and support DPS classes like Retribution Paladins for the exact same reason. No more need to change macros just because your healer teammate turns out to be party 2 this time around. I really hope Blizzard makes this change. The entire PvP community would massively benefit from it. The second method is what I currently swapped into because of this solo shuffle problem. I now simply focus the healer at the start of the match and have a focus macro to every crowd control ability plus my interrupt. If I need to crowd control the second DPS, I simply target him, do it, and get back to my target. This method is probably the most popular one, but it has a major disadvantage. What if the enemy healer has stealth or is affected by a mage mass invisibility? Yep, your focus immediately disappears and you have to refocus the same guy again. It ain't perfect, but until my previous suggestion becomes a reality, it will have to do for now. The last method is to simply target who you want to crowd control, do what you have to do, and swap back to your target. This is not optimal, it will make you slower and massively cut down your reaction time, but I have seen some people doing it and being pretty efficient with it. It is one of those things where if you have gotten really used to doing it, it might actually work. But still, I do not recommend this for 99% of you. It will most likely be hindering your gameplay. Always make sure that you are dispelling as often as possible with your Consume Magic ability. Removing, for example, a Paladin's Blessing of Protection can and often will win you the game. Also, an amazing way to keep momentum up through Fel Rush and immediately get back on your target is to follow it up with Fellblade. These two abilities synergize perfectly together, and you can also do the same with Vengeful Retreat. Although in that case, make sure that you don't need the glimpse effect that time, as this will immediately land your character and thus disable the glimpse effect. And just like that, you are now a Master Demon Hunter, ready to conquer the arena and take Azeroth by storm. Thanks for watching, subscribe if you haven't yet, and as always, I will see you in the arena.